Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Enough to Keep Going podcast. This is episode number 338 for May 12th, 2024. Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. And with me tonight, I have one Mr. GameLogIQ. Game, how are you doing?
All right, man. Pretty good.
Great. And unfortunately, DB couldn't make it today, so it's just going to be the two of us, but we will soldier on through the podcast here with our main GX stories. Up first, GameLogIQ, you have a demo you're trying out here on the PC.
Yeah, so give me just 1 second here to get the video rigged. I forgot that I was first.
It's all right. I can jump into mine if you want to.
I've got it right here.
All right. Oh, okay.
Sorry. So the game that I've been playing a demo of is a game called Drive Rally. So it's spelled, well, I mean, you can see it there on the screen. It's spelled #Drive Rally. So if you think back to kind of last year, we had EA's WRC 2023. And it was their first time out of the gate with the Rally license, and it wasn't that great. The game got delivered with a lot of graphical imperfections and a lack of optimization, and I'd kind of expected a lot more out of Codemasters because they're like one of my top 5 favorite studios of all time. KT Racing, who had that license previously, is out working on Test Drive Unlimited Solar Crown, and so there's room in the rally world for a racing game. And so here we go with Drive Rally. The game that Pixel Perfect Dude, who is the studio behind this game, the game that they worked on before was called Drive, or #Drive. And it's a mobile game that's available for Android and iOS, and also available on the Nintendo Switch. And that game is kind of what I call an encapsulated endless runner, which means it's an endless runner, but it does actually have levels and stages. So it's not like the very first endless runner games where you literally just run forever. But that game has, in between stages, you can do upgrades, you can, buy cars, etc. So like I said, it's developed by the studio called Pixel Perfect Dude, which is headed by one guy, but I think he outsources some of the additional work to get some help with. So they are listed as having an employee headcount of about 2 to 10, but typically, it's usually about 6 people. So I think he has some transients who come in and out. And they're an indie developer out of Poland. So right over there with People Can Fly and CD Projekt Red. Right now, #Drive has a rating of about 4.3 stars on the Google Play Store and 4.6 on the iOS App Store. So that's just some background on kind of the dev and the game that they've done so far. Drive Rally isn't a really huge level up in terms of its graphical approach. You can see here that it kind of has cel-shaded graphics and kind of that cozy graphic style without like a huge amount of detail right on the outsides, on the left and right of the track. And so it kind of leans in the direction of 2020's Art of Rally, if you remember that game by a studio called Fun Selector Labs, Inc. But when you look at the physics engine, the gameplay leans a little bit more in the direction of Dirt Rally 2.0. And that's not to say it's a full sim by any means, but my main point here is that there's a lot more going on underneath the hood than kind of the graphical style kind of would lead you to believe. So this is a demo of the game that I've been playing. I've played, about 30 minutes or so. There's 2 different modes. It has, if you go into the quick race mode, it has, I think, 2 cars and 3 different stages of one rally race. So 3 different kind of segments of the track. And then if you go into career mode, it's got a 3 race kind of sample of the career mode. And in that career mode, if you play all 3 races, you should get to a point where you unlock in a car. And my guess is that car is going to become available to you if you actually buy the game. And when you start in the career mode, then that'll be your first unlock. Controls are pretty tight, and so with some minor exceptions, you can hit some really good runs where you're kind of really in the groove. You should be able to acclimate pretty quickly, and then have your turn in and your drift kind of you know, getting you kind of in the zone. Each of the cars that are featured in here, definitely have like different driving models, and so this car that I'm driving here tends to be faster and a little more difficult to handle, particularly on some of the longer runs when you get up to speed. The other car is I think a little slower, but it feels like it accelerates a little faster. So, like I said, it's not quite a sim, but it definitely kind of leans in the direction, and the controls feel as tight as a Codemasters game or KT Racing. The audio in the game is pretty good. It's not as kind of guttural and throaty as a AAA game, but the major thing for me is I drive and race a car a lot by hearing, like where the engine is and where I'm revving up and revving down and where it's hitting the limiter, and I'm changing gears, and that kind of informs me of, kind of how I need to drive the car and when I need to kind of push on the accelerator, not just for moving the car forward, but actually for like mechanical grip, depending on where I am and kind of apexing the turn. The only nit that I have so far is like the navigator sometimes feels like he's a hair second too late on a couple specific turns. I think you've seen in there a couple turns where, the track actually goes left, but I goes right. Those are the points in the game specifically where I feel like, I feel like the navigator was just a sec too late. The plan is for there to be more voices in the game, and you can hear, you can't hear Tao, but if you listen to the game's audio at some point, you'll hear that it sounds, in some of the ad copy that's in the game on its Steam page, the voices are going to kind of be the comic relief. So this voice for the navigator that's in the demo sounds a lot like Arnold Schwarzenegger. So it's, kind of supposed to be the joke. I have not been able to find whether or not there's going to be wheel and pedal support for this game, even though, like I said, it looks like a more casual kind of cozy game. As I've said, the physics model kind of makes it feel sim-like, and it would lend itself to wheel and pedals just as much as like a Need for Speed game. So the demo is up now. There's a Discord server you can also join, and the game is supposed to be out sometime this year in 2024.
So this second race that we're seeing here, are you just racing your Ghost from the previous race then?
Well, so here I'm in the quick race mode, and that does seem to automatically apply the Ghost. Typically in a racing game like this, you will have the ability to turn Ghosts on or off, and maybe that's somewhere in the menus and I missed it, but right now it just automatically configures the Ghost to run. So yeah, that is my Ghost on track that you've seen there a couple times.
Oh. I know this is just a demo, but are you able to race anybody else, or like not real people, but just AI or anything like that?
I have not seen where you can. Of course, rally racing in the large majority of its form isn't really. I mean, you just race against people for time. Like everybody's on the track at different times. You're never on the track at the same time as anyone. Okay. There's a couple like weird kind of modes out on the periphery where the track is split and you're on like one side of the track and they're on the other side of the track and you guys are running at the same time. But at the end of the day, you're still running for time. I have not seen, and again, this is because I haven't dug, so maybe it's out there, but I haven't checked, like the Steam page and some of the other, dug around in the Discord to see if he's mentioned his intention to make this multiplayer.
And how did you come about finding this game, or have you played the other one you mentioned, just the regular drive?
I have played the other one. Yes, I have played the other one on mobile. I do have it on Android. That's not how I got tipped off to this game. And in fact, right now, I honestly don't know how I got tipped off this game. I think I saw it on a news article where on some gaming website where they mentioned that this demo was out. So I went and checked it out.
Nice. That's very cool. Yeah, I like the graphics look pretty nice just because it's that cell shading. So it's very pleasing to the eye.
Yeah, what we've seen is that, as I mentioned a couple times with Borderlands, right, cell shading kind of proves the test of time. It tends to, like, the game doesn't like decay or feel like it hasn't aged well, as is the case with most, realistic graphics tend to be very much representative of the the art of technology at the time, whereas cell shading seems to not really suffer from that particular aspect.
Yeah, usually not too much. Although I will say, going off a little tangent here, like as I see like the evolution of the Dragon Ball Z games, because those have always been cell shading. You can kind of see like it does get better, but it's obviously not drastic like a real world kind of looking games and stuff like that. So, but you always can see those differences. Warawana, thank you for joining us tonight. He just jumped in the chat a few minutes ago. All right, so let's jump into my game. I jumped back into Starfield. I had started playing Fallout 4, which I'll talk about here in a little while. On my playthrough for that. But in playing Fallout 4, I was like, oh man, I really want to go back to Starfield. So I jumped back into Starfield these past couple weeks. And actually, I played a little bit more kind of earlier in the week and more last weekend than this weekend and the latter part of the week. I just felt like kind of jumping back in there, just kind of, obviously Starfield's a little bit more refined on the controls and the shooting. I'll talk about the Fallout 4 shooting later, but it's definitely a lot better with the shooting, I think, at least in my opinion, now that I've played both of them fairly close together. But I just want to kind of go back in there and just, start my playthrough, continue my playthrough, I should say, not start another one. Just going through, just doing. Actually, I think I was going through the main missions again, the main storyline missions. So just looking for artifact pieces. If you know anything about the story, I was doing that. I think I got at least one of those, maybe two of them, and just kind of going back, get into the flow of the game itself. Just kind of relearning the controls since I had been playing a lot of No Man's Sky before that. Pretty kind of similar, I should say. I shouldn't say pretty similar, but kind of similar as far as like starship control. Piloting your ship around. So just getting used to that stuff again. But I definitely want to jump back more into it these next few weeks and stuff. So, but no, I just having a good time with Starfield again and just enjoying it. I know a lot of people like I've been listening to a lot more podcasts. I've had a little bit more time this past couple week, and it just everybody just still dogging it. Like it's like, all right, guys, like if you don't like it, you don't like it. That's cool, but and it's boring, which I can see if it's boring. Like main storylines, it's not like you're battling, evil aliens and stuff like that. At least not so, as far as I can tell, not yet. I haven't got that far into it. Although I did come up against a new faction playing through the main storyline, so I hadn't seen that before. I don't know if they're human. I don't know if they're alien. I don't know what's going on in that part, but I mean, I enjoy the story just because I'm always a space guy. A lot of people talk about Fallout and Skyrim because there's always like a choice between the two. Like some people like the fantasy more, and some people like the post-apocalyptic. Uh, and I think they're trying to get that third space theme in there too. So I kind of gravitated more toward that. So just enjoying it, just going through it. So I'm gonna continue on playing it, having some fun there, just shooting robots and aliens and whatnot, non-sentient aliens, I should say. So yeah, just going through that. Any questions or anything on there?
So now, are you playing the game like with the new content that's there? Not new not new. I can't remember what I mean with the bundle of changes that they delivered as kind of the preparatory drop. Getting ready for Shattered Galaxies or whatever. There
Yeah,
were some
no,
quality of life tweaks that they were supposed to put in, and
yeah, I know
and
they changed. I think like the when like you're talking to people, so it's not like you're not like in their face like you normally are. So kind of I guess you get more of that side angle. No, but actually I stopped playing actually right before that big update came out. So uh, I haven't had a chance yet to check all that out or even. I mean, I didn't mind it. I don't really. It didn't really bother me when I know a lot of people say kind of throws them off when you all of a sudden it zooms in and you're just talking to the person. But it even before it didn't seem to do that all the time. Like every once in a while, you kind of have like a weird, and then maybe it was just like a glitch or something. But I would have either like a side angle or it almost like pull back like all the way, so it's like a third person view, and I could just see like the two characters talking as they're going through their spiel for whatever quest I'm on. But unfortunately, I haven't seen all the quality of life stuff yet. But yeah, that's why I want to continue playing this coming week, so I can see all
well,
that stuff.
and this doesn't and Doesn't it have the 60 frame per second patch now?
I believe so. Yeah, for Xbox, right? Or is that for? I think that was for Xbox side, right?
Yes, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, because PC already ran above 60 frames per
yeah.
second.
So, and in saying that, I was playing both on mostly my Xbox Series X, and then I played a little bit back on PC too. So just going back in between the two whenever I happen to be either in front of the TV or my PC. So it's because those are in different rooms. Yep. So it's cool. All right, let's jump into our main news headlines. I will start us off with some Nintendo news from this past week. So they had their, I shouldn't say they released their full year financial results for this past fiscal year. It's obviously they don't have the January to December fiscal year. They kind of offset it, and in doing so, they have announced a couple things actually. So not a total, not an exact date, but we have a June 2024 direct that's going to be coming out this year, this summer, probably around E3. Like everybody else is having their directs and presentations and stuff. So they didn't, like I said, they didn't give an exact date, just a month so far. But in doing so, they had said during that. So this Nintendo Direct in June is just going to be for the latter half, for the rest of the remaining year of 2024, just games. So what they have coming out for the Switch, and they actually mentioned they're not going to mention anything about their successor to the Nintendo Switch until the end of this coming fiscal year. So until March 31st, 2025. So it's obviously, I guess, an official announcement that there is a successor, but there will be no hardware announcements, at least for this in this June direct. So, which is kind of interesting too, because we did hear there was that rumor, in quotes, where they said people were saying that the release of the successor was actually pushed out to 2025. So that might be kind of, I guess that was kind of true, even though they've never actually said there was a successor at when that rumor came out, which was earlier in the year, and that you know. So there was no exact successor or even a date of when that might come out. So maybe that was actually true after all. And then also during that, let me jump back to that article here for a second. During the financial, they released the financial statement, and then during that they also released an X tweet, or whatever it's called now. I don't even know. Talking about like the June direct, and there's no successor and stuff like that. But they also mentioned during the financial report that for the coming fiscal year, they're looking to push out or have a target of 13.5 million Switches in sales. So, and even they say it's pretty, it's a pretty aggressive number, but obviously they must see things. If, you and I've been in the business world for a while, so they have all those projections and analysts that I guess they see something that'll to get them to that number. Even though they, like I said, they even admitted that's a pretty strong forecast for the coming year. But we'll see what happens. And then obviously they mentioned how Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom, and the Mario movie had boosted their this past fiscal year's numbers. So, and that they were over forecast by about 700,000 units. So I don't know if they have anything. Obviously, they don't have a Mario movie coming out this year, and I don't know more. No, I don't think they've mentioned when the next one's supposed to come out. Maybe in 2025, 2026. I don't remember if they had mentioned or not when the next Mario movie is coming out. But I mean, we don't really know. Obviously, this June direct is going to tell us like what's coming out for the rest of the year. Obviously, um, I was looking at another article here actually. So we know of Paper Mario Thousand Year Door, which is actually a remake, reboot, whatever that's coming out May 23rd. Luigi's Mansion 2 HD is coming out June 27th. And then we have Pokemon game, which that's actually not coming out until next year. So maybe a launch game. I think that would be pretty big. That's a lot of units. And then of course there's also Metro Prime, which has there's no date given for that at all as of release recently. So maybe they'll show that. Maybe that's going to be the big game, even though I don't know. I don't really see Metro Prime as like a system seller or anything like that. But obviously, there's a lot of people that like those games. Excuse me. But yeah, we'll just have to see, what's coming up for that direct. It's going to be interesting. There was another, and I got both. These first two articles were from Game Industry Biz. It mentioned something in here. I don't know if you have any comments or anything on this while I look up this other thing they had mentioned here.
No, I mean the interesting thing that I caught from the financials was their listing of, and I don't have it pulled up, but their listing of like top 10 games that have sold the most on Switch. It just caused me to kind of go off and look at that as be conscious of any of on that list that I haven't played, of which there are definitely a few. So I've kind of wired it into my backlog to make sure I at some point go put hands on at least some of those.
Yeah. Here's the other thing. There was the Nintendo president had confirmed that next year's model will continue to use the Nintendo account system, which I think we had already heard about earlier in the year, and that they expect a growing number of customers obviously are going to be buying digital, but also reiterated that the importance of continuing to offer physical versions of games. So, which is always good, I suppose, for people who like that and preservation and all that. So yeah, it was just kind of interesting that it was kind of the official. There is something coming, but we don't know yet when. So, but at least we know finally it's going to be at least within the next year or so. We'll get at least some kind of announcement. I would assume probably at the end of the year, like they did with the Switch, the original Switch. They may drop something. Say, hey, this is the new one coming out. Next year. Obviously, I think because the first mention of the original Switch was what, like early fall, late.
Well, it was January. The first time they officially announced that they were actually doing it was January, and then they said, then let me take that back. I think you were right the first time. I think they told us in December that they were doing it, and that the announcement was going to be in January. And then January was when they did the show, announcing the release date was March.
Yeah, with the good old commercial they put out there with everybody playing the Switch in any possible situation, which some of them I've done now in the future. And back then I was like, I'm never going to do that, but
Hey,
playing on the train.
I sat in my car while I was so when I put the Super Bowl order in, they were just being crushed by like a big rush, and I put the order in and it kept like not accepting my credit card like via the online form, and that was because they had stopped taking online orders. So like I quickly got dressed and was like, hey, I'm gonna have to go to the thing to get the stuff. So I went there and went in, and I still had to stand in line and just put the order in locally, and they were like, it's gonna be 30 something minutes, and like fortunately I had made all these moves like 2 hours before the game was supposed to start. So and I had thought that this was going to be the case, so I had taken my Nintendo Switch OLED with me. So I sat in the car and played. I can't even remember what game I was playing, but I sat in the car and played on my Nintendo Switch OLED, for 35 minutes while I was waiting for the wings and tater tots or whatever to get done.
Nice. See, you just never know when it'll come in handy. That was another thing actually they had mentioned during the call was I guess they were to ask about any kind of shortages possibly for the successor. Which the president of Nintendo said that, no, probably not, because of there was kind of that chip shortage too back a few years ago. So that kind of killed him, or not killed him, that kind of hurt him. But he said he doesn't foresee any kind of problems with the successor when it does come out. So we'll see. But it depends on how much they have. Obviously available for stock, and then obviously with scalpers and stuff, they always like to jump on that stuff. So hopefully they'll have enough for demand this coming time. So. On the subject of Nintendo, though, you have a story here with their breaking ties to a certain social media.
Yeah, so this story over on Engadget Gaming by Will Shanklin. Nintendo is done paying Elon Musk for X integration, or Twitter integration. Nintendo has apparently had enough of X's Twitter API fees. The Mario Maker said on Wednesday that starting on June 10th, direct integration from the Switch's image album to Elon Musk's Nazi Curious platform will no longer work. With Nintendo's departure, all three major console makers have pulled the plug on native screen sharing to Twitter. So, in case you haven't followed this, Twitter's actually this started before Musk. There used to be a time where Twitter APIs were extremely open when they were trying to get growth. And so, if you remember back when TweetDeck was not owned by Twitter, And when lots of people had remember back in the App Store, at that time in the App Store, there were lots of Twitter alternatives. There were different maps, so you wouldn't have to use the actual official Twitter app. But even before Musk came along, they got to a point where they started locking that down. They needed to monetize that. They were also tired of people siphoning data off of Twitter using those APIs and then monetizing their own ventures. And there was a whole development community built up around Twitter APIs, so people making these alternative applications. And there was a point where Twitter said, nope, that's done. So, but since Musk has come in, he has also jacked up the price of those APIs to actual formal enterprises that have been leveraging them to use them to seek out customer data and market data. And so the word on the street is that low-level enterprises pay about $42K a month for access to a Twitter API, and larger businesses, your multi-trillion-dollar companies, those guys are paying anywhere from $125K to $250K. So Nintendo, I'm sure, was in one of those groups that was, having them charge something in excess of 42 grand. And so that's why it got locked down. Now, much ado has been made in the past few months whenever, Xbox has canceled its access, or PlayStation has canceled its access, that, as normally goes in the, gamer Twitter conversation, that this is somehow an L for, the various console makers. But much has been the case, as I discovered, like with Helldivers 2, there's typically a business reason or a regulatory reason behind these things. These companies tend to not just be doing things willy-nilly for the sake of, some wackadoodle reason. So, Xbox, has been, did kill this because of increased fees and because, you look at it and you look at what you're getting out of it. And you're like, there's no reason to make that capital expenditure. So the workaround for this is to send. So if you use the mobile Nintendo Switch app, you can send screenshots that you take on the Switch to your phone, and then you can post them to Twitter. You could also, I've never done this. I guess you can hook up your Nintendo Switch to a PC using a USB cable. And transfer your photos that way. It probably comes up, like any type of Android device. So that's another way to do it. Which was just the workaround that I've used for Xbox. I take the screenshot and I move it to, I put it in my OneDrive or whatever and access it from there, or on my PlayStation, push it to my mobile app and send it. Or, just bite the bullet. Like if it's really that big a deal for you, if you're a content creator or something, just buy, an external standalone capture card, and take your photos and your videos that way. That's how I do a lot of, the stuff that I do for posting on Twitter.
Yeah, I would usually just take out the card, and I have like a little USB dock or little thing. I could just pop the card in, pop that on my PC, and I would just like transfer it from there. So same thing. Looks like you can do it from Facebook, but I guess that's going away too later in the year. So all the social medias.
Potentially, yeah. I don't think they said one way or another whether that was certainly going to happen. But yeah, it's definitely on the radar.
Yeah. So welcome, Lord Metroid. He just jumped in the chat here a few minutes ago. Also, thanks for joining us. All right. So if you want to jump into the last news article here we have here tonight.
Yep. She's had it up on the screen. This news story over on Games Radar by, sorry, it's really small here on the teleprompter, by Ali Jones. Mass Effect and Dragon Age veteran invokes BioWare's biggest RPG flop as he rails against EA's newfound hunger, in air quotes, for AI. I put them in air quotes. They're actually in actual quotation marks in the article. Mass Effect and Dragon Age veteran David Geider has hit back against his former publisher's apparent hunger for AI development tools, referencing developer BioWare's biggest failure to do so. Earlier this week, Andrew Wilson, CEO of BioWare owner EA, doubled down on the company's commitment to AI during an earnings call. During an earnings call, Wilson suggested that more than 50% of our development processes would be affected by generative AI in the future, and that there is a real hunger to use the tools across the company. So, look, I've mentioned to people before, I am currently assigned working on an AI program, and I don't buy this. Like, my own AI technology that I'm working on, like, somebody's got to prove a lot more to me before I see a tangible, like resultant conservation of labor that actually moves the needle. Now, that's in terms of on the development side of the house. The AI technology that we're working on will definitely benefit the human beings who are doing work who are not mentats and can't run high level complex mathematical equations in their head, certainly. But for 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 developers to develop an AI that actually helps the developers, that to me is something different. And like the conventional wisdom that's going on around now, look, low level stuff, I often joke. It's a joke when I say it, but it's not actually a joke because they actually said it. Square Enix, for instance, has had a problem for years where they employ a lot of artists, in their penchant of not getting games out on time. And those artists, they have been in interviews where they literally talk about, yeah, I painted the same rock for like 3 years. So that type of work, that's the type of work that you're going to get an AI to do. But your really high level work, and there was another article that went around today that I forgot, I didn't pull it, but where the person was saying the exact same thing that I've been saying, which is that, look, your low level, repetitive, recurring work that, if I put 1,000 rocks on a screen, your typical gamer isn't going to be able to pick out differentiation among those rocks, right? So then why am I going to put a human being on that work that's not necessarily work that's really high on my value ladder of input? And that's not to say anything about the work that those people do not being of value, but I'm saying in a world where the industry is trying to figure out how to tamp down $300 million budgets, then, and seems to not want to do the things that seem to me to make sense, which is like, hey, maybe you just don't get that extra session in the mocap studio. Maybe we don't have Najee Jeter film 3 more scenes of Spider-Man mocap, considering he breaks a camera every time he does that, and those cameras range anywhere from $8,000 to $250,000. So there are other ways to do cost cutting and cost management, but Andrew Wilson seems to want to reach for EA, and I think it's a lot of, very overblown. So at any rate, David Geider, who worked at BioWare since 1999 and worked there for 17 years, kind of called, EA on the carpet saying, look, you guys are saying, the devs are cheerleading this and hoping, looking forward to this happening. But, you guys are extrapolating it to a level of hyperbole that isn't realistic. And then the reminder that he threw at them is like, yeah, just like when we were doing Anthem and you guys came through and told us, that we had a live service mandate that we needed to meet. You guys portrayed it as, oh, we thought this would be cool. When the reality was we really didn't. So I thought this was interesting, again, getting a developer from the industry to kind of corroborate some of the things that I've been saying from a technical perspective. I think that there will be efficiencies that can be gained in the production pipeline, but the degree to which they'll be gained, I think, is being overemphasized. And on top of that, it also doesn't mean that the work that's going to be optimized or lessen in level of effort is going to be utilized in a way that gets you, the gamer, the type of thing that you want. It is highly likely that the type of thing you're going to get is you're going to get AI being utilized in something like the Battlefield pipeline, which is 1,400, 1,500 developers now, right, to crank out a game that's riddled with microtransactions and battle passes and, all the types of things. Now, again, I play those games. I like those games. I have the ability to say, I'm not going to buy that skin. That doesn't bother me. I see a lot of other gamers, say, well, if somebody else has a skin that bothers me that I don't have it because I feel like I don't have the complete game. And I'm kind of like, yeah, that's the point. right? I mean, you can choose to not buy a skin and like just play like the 30 something other skins that are available in the game. So, I don't. At the end of the day, overall, I don't feel AI is going to be the solution to some of these budgetary control problems. David Geider clearly doesn't feel that way either, and he also feels that it's gonna bother developers who are asked to employ it in certain ways if if the ask is so that they can crank out more gotcha games, with predatory mechanics to go after the whales in gaming. I don't know, Tao. Any thoughts on that one?
Sorry, I was having some video issues there. I had to jump out for a second. Um, yeah, I mean, I think we've talked about this over and over. It's like I guess like the mundane things. Yeah, yeah, it's gonna help. Obviously, stuff that's s- I want to say easy. Obviously, it's not easy, but if it's something that's like kind of repetitive, I guess if you want to say, they can maybe just use AI for. But I don't think it's there yet. Excuse me, there yet to like fully replace like part or like a whole job. Like I think what these companies might be hoping for at least. uh and but we're gonna have to see. Like it's like we've mentioned a bunch of times in the past. This is kind of the infancy, so we're gonna have to find out like where this is going to go. And even though I'm not a developer myself, but I'm starting to see like people where I work starting to try to use it also for their jobs, for maybe not so much for developing, a little bit for developing, but um just trying to help them kind of just do mundane tasks and stuff like that. Which that's why I'm kind of seeing that, for at least from my end, because like I said, I'm not a developer and I don't do anything with software itself. So we'll just have to check out what's going to happen. And go back real quick to the previous story. Wara was asking, what benefit did the sharing even have? He's talking about the Nintendo sharing, and I think you kind of mentioned like for content creators, getting quick shots or videos, up on X or social media, and also it just if you see a cool clip or and I've mentioned this before, like that I always wanted to have some kind of way to video or take a picture of something cool that happened, and you could share it with your friends. So that was kind of, I think, kind of the benefits that you can see from doing that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll kind of the same thing. I mean, and this is the weird like bathtub of this feature, right? You have you have normals, right? That uh, that I would say kind of find it casually beneficial because the thought was when this stuff was integrated, this gives you an ability to to utilize that and access to that feature to utilize that function without having to have a bunch of extra equipment, right? Which would always be the turnoff, right, to somebody who wasn't like doing that full time. And just like you mentioned, right? I mean, in fact, to a certain extent, why we got into podcasting, but as we got into podcasting, why we got into live streaming and game capture and stuff was because we come into the podcast or even without the podcast, you go in Monday morning back in the day when people used to work in the office. So this is a pre-COVID, pre-pandemic mentality. But you go into the office and you're telling people this story, right? Of these great things that happen in a game, but you can't show anyone. So just the simple thing of being able to put that stuff up to YouTube, but also just being able to share that amongst your own friends network. And for some people, that friends network is on Twitter. I think where a lot of this has gone, I guess maybe, and I don't know because I don't personally use them extensively myself, but I guess what I'd ask is, if people actually use like the because when you take that stuff, it posts to like your Xbox page or your PlayStation page, and people who are on your friends list like can see that in their feed. So I guess for most of those people, it is absolutely extraneous. Like you probably don't need it to go to Twitter for those people to see it. But for people who were accessing social media, and I think again, I think the notion back then was social media was a thing for you know for normal people, and I'm not saying normal as a derogatory term. I mean like for like the average person. But I feel like most more recently, like social media, particularly for the gaming conversation, is only really being utilized like by people who need to eat, sleep, and breathe like the social communication and interaction of games, which is just niche upon niche upon niche. So I think at that point, it's like those people who are on Twitter, for instance, discussing games. Those are the type of people that I feel like you can go get a capture card, right? Like you're talking about games enough and you're deep enough into it that like if you really need to do that, you can. Like the casual player, and I just mean casual from a social interaction perspective. You can capture that stuff and post it, and your friends, right, on your Xbox Live list and on the PSN can see it. So I don't. Apparently these companies certainly don't feel that it's worth $42K to $250K a month, to access a Twitter API.
Yeah, I know with Xbox, or at least lately, you have to actually go in there and say, "Hey, I want this on my feed." But I think initially it was, yeah, it would just kind of go on there automatically, like as soon as you took a shot or something. So, but now you can, it gives you all kinds of options to share to either your activity feed or because then there's like clubs now that they have on the Xbox side too that you can join and you can post to there, and then or if you want to do it to OneDrive and stuff like that. So it's just it's a nice feature though. I mean, like I said, it's integrated in there. There's other ways, like I said, we've said, that you can get around it. So.
Yes, I think Warwana is. So a couple comments. I'll just go ahead and read them out. Lord Metroid mentions, I personally don't want AI in games except for fixing bugs. Other than that, I'd rather have human creativity, ingenuity. It's kind of interesting because I guess maybe I'm like this about certain elements of technology. I mean, before the whole AI craze, for instance, like, and this hits on one of my pet peeves, because look, smartphone manufacturers, just give us the power button back. Like, stop taking the power button to launch your goofy AI thing that if we really wanted access to it, we would use the app or something. Like, stop taking our power button away. But like anytime those things have launched, like I never use them. I promptly shut them down immediately. Like whenever Stinkin' Bixby launches, right, on a Samsung phone. But now you have AI integrations in WhatsApp and in Spotify. And even though, like for music, like I'm a big shuffle meister, right? Like I'm working, I just need tunes in the background. I need tunes, but typically, 80% of the time I'm not like super particular about what's playing. So you would think I might be the person who would take advantage of AI, right? And just say, hey, just play what I like. But like I do everything that I can to avoid hitting that button or utilizing that function or that feature. Just because like I'm not interested in it. I don't want me to be feeding it data. And if I needed the help, I'd ask you for it. So I totally agree with what Lord Metroid is saying. Warwana goes on to ask a question. I was told Helldivers 2 hate was solely due to trying to implement a PSN login months after launch, and if it was there day one, there would not have been an issue. My personal feeling is, I think I mentioned on another podcast earlier this weekend, I don't personally think that that's true. There have been many games where you have purchased the game and on Steam, and sometime after the fact, like the Rockstar launcher was not there when a lot of Rockstar games launched on Steam. And now, pretty sure, I mean, not be absolutely certain, I think you have to hit the Rockstar launcher to launch your games. So maybe that's true. I don't know that it is. And at the end of the day, as I've been saying here, and as I've said on Basement Radio Arcade Podcast and other places, Twitter reactions are not news. People get cranky on Twitter, like I don't care. Like, show me a tangible impact that is financially measurable, and then I'll give it credence, and then I'll pay attention to it. As I've talked about this whole PlayStation Network controversy, if PlayStation felt that there was a huge financial impact from these 177 countries where they're delisting games, then they wouldn't do it. Companies don't sit around a boardroom and have two COAs, two courses of action laid out before them, one that results in significantly greater money and another that results in significantly less money, and deliberately and consciously choose the one that results in deliberately less money, unless there's some major get. And so what's clear and apparent to me is that there's more for them, they feel, to gain from not selling the game in those 177 countries. Again, when you look at the list, I don't know that Totoki or Herman Holst or whatever. Like, I don't know that anybody's losing sleep over the notion that somebody in Antarctica or Madagascar or on the Seychelles Islands can't play Ghost of Tsushima in multiplayer mode, right? So, I mean, maybe they do. I don't personally think they do. So, I mean, you know, I can play Ghost of Tsushima. I have it on PlayStation. I'll probably buy it on PC. I'm not going to lose any sleep over, I feel bad for those people. But I don't know that it's something for me to raise up torches and pitchforks and storm the Bastille and eat the rich over.
Yeah, I mean, and if you think about it, yeah, like you said, it's going to be a small percentage. Yeah, it sucks. But I mean, business wise, yeah, they're gonna cut their losses on those ones. So it's not gonna hit them. It's not gonna hit them too hard.
Yeah, Paul asked an interesting question: is AI not human creativity? And I mean, this is a philosophical question that's out there. Since humans program the AI, is therefore the derivative creation of AI not created by a human? I mean, I guess my kind of response to that, if you want to kind of apply futurism and the view of a technologist, if you hit something, if you have the Star Trek replicator produce chocolate, is that the same thing that you get from a German chocolatier? And I would say it's obviously not. And I would say for the way society is going to evolve is, each of us will have our threshold. For a lot of things, there will be things that like we don't care about. Like in general, I like food, but like I don't typically get super wrapped around the axle about I do this all the time with like the Instacart person, right? I say, I don't know, pick a thing. Like I want chips, and they'll be like, hey, they're out of these kinds of chips. I'm like, I don't care. Like, just pick another chip. Like, I don't care. So, like, I don't get wrapped around the axle about brands or particular flavors or whatever. And I suppose, when AI, for the example that I just gave, some people are going to say, I don't care if AI is making my music selections for me. It doesn't bother me. For me, that's above my threshold of caring. And so I don't want to participate and interact with technology that way.
Yeah, I was trying to look up because I thought, going back to Helldivers for a second, I thought they actually, it looks like Sony did reverse their stance on that. So I think after May 30th. So it says, excuse me, the May 6th update, which would have required Steam and PlayStation Network account linking, excuse me, for new players and for current players beginning May 30th would not be moving forward. So yeah, it looks like they did. And that was from the official ex PlayStation account. So.
Wait, so Paul says, no, the biggest issue with Helldivers was removing it from people who have been playing it for 3 months. So, but I guess you're saying because it would require a PSN linking account, and people can't get to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, and again, my personal feeling is if I would have seen a bunch of people from Madagascar and Bhutan yelling, shouting, and screaming on Twitter, being pissed off because they were going to lose access to the game, then I would have considered that valid. But I didn't see a lot of that. In fact, the one person that I saw from an actual country impacted by the delisting basically said that there was a workaround and they had no problems with it. So I mean, and that's not to invalidate it. I'm sure there were some people. I'm sure that the number's not zero.
Yeah.
But I did not hear a volume of voice track that lent that to being the causality by people who were actually impacted.
Yeah, just looking at this, I got this from The Verge too. This where I got this information. But they said within a few hours on Steam, they received over 14,000 negative reviews on Steam, which then ballooned to 200,000 in the next couple days. So and that changed the overall overwhelming positive review to obviously an overwhelming negative. So
and that
a review bombing. That's their thing.
And I did a big write up on Twitter. What one of my mutuals, Perpetuity, is named Twitter op-eds. I wrote a big Twitter op-ed, and I said that is the causality that why Sony changed it. Because what Because remember, you go back to Days Gone, right? And what we learned out of that was like review scores matter, awards matter, sales numbers matter to Sony's governance and management of its product portfolio. And so what Sony does not want is they don't want a game of theirs, particularly a prestigious game, particularly a well-known game, particularly a new game, because those things pop in the algorithm, right? When you're in Steam searching, they don't want that game coming up with its reviews in big yellow and red font. That is the kicker. If they had gotten some negative reviews, but it had stayed positive or mostly positive, I don't know that they would have swum backwards on that particular topic. But the fact that it went flipped to red and yellow, yeah, that's not a good look for them from a PR perspective. And
yeah, go
ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. I was going to say, and of course, since this is the internet and people have to overdo things, they started review bombing the original Helldivers, which has obviously nothing to do with this. So you just, people are going to be people, on the internet. So, but I mean, I guess kind of if you want to see a positive light, like, they did change their minds, by doing this. So, I mean, it kind of sucks that they have to do that, but once again, it was a small percentage, but obviously people were up in arms, and maybe this will keep them from doing something worse in the future. Or well, I don't even think it's worse. I mean, you just link your accounts, but I mean, obviously it's for those people they can't do that, but I don't know. It's just a weird situation, I guess. And I think originally this was supposed to be done on the first day, and I think they had it going, but then I guess there was a bunch of issues, so they had to take it off, and they totally took it down.
Yeah, so we talked about this a little bit on another show this weekend. So yeah, on launch there was some problem. I assume probably some problem with tokenization between the Helldivers servers and the PlayStation Network, and there was an inability to get users to link their accounts to the PlayStation Network. And I believe part of what fed that is that they were not Sony wasn't expecting the amount of positive reception that they got, and uptake that they got, and consumption they got from the Steam community for Helldivers 2. They expected the vast majority of players to be on PlayStation and a smaller fraction to be on PC. But it completely went lopsided. PC took off like gangbusters. One of the reasons that this PlayStation Network requirement is being levied, according to Will Smith, who is a former editor-in-chief of Maximum PC, a former employee of Stray Bombay, who are the development house for the Anacrusis, which is a 4-player co-op PvE shooter game that is available on PC and is in Game Pass, and also the former editor-in-chief of Tested. So, according to Will, and this was on an episode of The Full Nerd, which is a podcast hosted by Gordon Ma-Ung. So both of these guys are from old school journalism from the late 90s, early 2000s, back when Gary Whitta was editor-in-chief of PC Gamer. Both PC Gamer and Maximum PC are from the same publishing house. They were in the same building, right on the same floor. So part of the regulatory requirements for GDPR and for a California law that is basically the analog of GDPR, and the analogy that I made this weekend was, remember when California emission rules got locked into place, car manufacturers did not decide that, hey, we're going to make cars that can only be sold in California, and then we're going to make cars for everyone else, right? They didn't want to be bothered. They didn't want to be bothered with trying to figure out, right, well, what if somebody moves to California? Like, what if somebody sell? Right? They just said, we're going to make cars, all cars compliant with the California rules. You see this a lot in software also. So rules get like GDPR. We see GDPR stuff pop up for us in the U.S., and we're absolutely not required to be compliant with it, right? So GDPR has a requirement where it kind of is a lot like right to be forgotten. So GDPR requires, and the California law requires, that if you're running software as a service, right, which includes like live service games, and you have a user's data, and a user calls you up, emails you, sends you a letter, says, hey, delete all my data. You have to be able to do that and comply with it. I can't delete your data. If you, Tailmaster, call me up and you're anonymous in my system, which means you show up as a completely different wackadoodle ID every single time you log in, I can't delete your data. I don't have that laser precision. So the only way I can do that is for you to have an account. What Will talked about was that the way they did this at Stray Bombay, because they didn't think that they were going to have big user numbers, is they leveraged like a third party, like licensing service to like create these accounts just so they would have something on the back end so that they could go in and comply with this law. But it was a cost to them and it was a level of effort to them in the integration. And so, right, what he believes is that they've got to do this to be compliant with the law because of the number of people that they have. And that number doesn't trigger until like 200 or 300,000, which is below the projection. I think 200 or 300,000 may be, 200 or 300,000. And so that's below the projection of what they thought they would have on board at launch. And so when the decision got made, go ahead and launch without the PSN integration, it was because they were projecting to be below a point that would trip that regulatory compliance. Now that they're above that, they don't have any legal recourse but to do it. And they can do it one of two ways. They can either force integration with PSN, or they can tell Arrowhead, right, go off and find a third-party licensing thing and figure it out on your own, but get it done. The option that they took was to use the PSN because the PSN's already in place. It doesn't have to be re-engineered. You're not reinventing the wheel. So that's part of, the thoughts on the causality behind it.
Nice. All right. So let's jump into our last segment now that we've gone on a whole tangent here. Let's jump into our round robin of games here. You got a couple of vastly different games here. GameLogIQ that you've been playing. One on PC, one on Switch. If you want to jump into Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 for us.
Yeah, and I don't have a ton to report. I think I'm at prestige level 328 or 329 now. 16 days left in season 3. I haven't really spent a lot of time with any of the modes, LTMs or LTEs. Double XP weekend is going on right now. Not very happy as a male with them deciding to do double XP wiki on a Mother's Day. I'm sure it worked out great for mothers who play Call of Duty. Not great for dads. So I doggone sure expect them to do double XP weekend on Father's Day weekend. But I put in as much time as I could. Continue to have a good time with it. Nothing like earth shattering in terms of changes this weekend. This season or since Reloaded. The Cheech and Chong shouts that those guys make, like I've literally had matches where I can't play because like every time like I'm crawling around, crouching, right, trying to figure out where the enemy is, like I get a Cheech or a Chong come by. It's particularly Chong. Chong has some great lines, and I just like I'm almost falling out of my seat laughing. But I think the main thing is, as I mentioned last time, like I'm going through and actually clicking and activating different challenges so that I'm unlocking like special muzzles, special ammo, special additional equipment, like the things that don't just unlock kind of naturally in your progression. So I have unlocked the ninja vest, which is huge because you basically run around making no noise at all. And then I unlocked the I can't remember what they're called, but there's a pair of boots. So typically for like gloves, boots, and something else, there's typically like 6 that you just natively unlock in your progression path. This ninja vest is like a 7th, right? So I went after that one. The boots is also a 7th. But these boots, I can't remember what they're called, but they basically keep you from being immobilized. So one of the things that is one of my big pet peeves, and again, I get angry when it happens. I'm not angry at people who do it. I don't feel like it's a cheesy tactic. Like I'm one of those people that like, look, if it wasn't in the game, then like then people couldn't use it. Like the fact that it's in the game, clearly the devs expect people to use it. But like one of the tactics that people love is they love spamming stun grenades on really small maps. So like on shipment, people they will arm like a demolition vest so that they carry. I think it's demolition. It's either demolition. I think demolition. I think lets you carry 2 lethals. There's another thing. I can't remember. It's not infantry. Maybe it's comms. But there's one vest that allows you to carry 2 tacticals. And people will equip that vest and stun grenades. And then what they'll do is they'll just, like, as soon as they spawn, they'll chuck a stun grenade over to the opposite corner, to each of the 2 opposite corners from wherever they spawn. And they'll just slow everyone down. And then they'll just sprint, like, and try and wipe a bunch of people out. So now I have these boots that, like, now somebody chucks a stun grenade at you and it doesn't affect you. So, yeah, having a good time with it.
Nice. It's interesting that they have the different I guess like the boots and the vest and stuff, because I don't think was that introduced in this game, or was it in 2 also where they kind of parsed out the abilities like that you can get?
No, that was definitely a change for 3.
Okay.
So in Modern Warfare 2, they had the same old like perk system. But in this one, what they did was they tied the notion of perks to a piece of to gear. So now, like for instance, like to carry 2 weapons, right? The old overkill perk, there is now an overkill vest, and so there's an overkill vest and there's a gun. I can't remember, gun specialist vest or something like that. So there's 2 vests out of the 6 that will allow you to carry 2 weapons. But then each of them also have like their own like unique factor to each of them that makes it more or less advantageous to carry like the gunner's vest. I think that's what it's called. It's the gunner's vest and then the overkill vest. But both of them allow you to carry 2 weapons. But then they also have like their own unique things that they grants that they give you as well.
Okay, like passives or something. Nice.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, and then yeah, I'm sure that's going to be changed again when it's, the Treyarch one comes out, because they always seem to do that where they kind of they have their own systems for each of the games. So whatever
it'll be
or the Black Ops one is.
It'll be interesting. I mean, Black Ops has historically been some of the better multiplayer, I think. I mean, at least the multiplayer that's resonated with people because they've had, unique factors to some of their systems. One of the reasons I think I've mentioned before, one of the reasons I love Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 this year is because it has had the least amount of change. There have been changes, but like it didn't take me that long to get my head wrapped around the notion of gear instead of perks. But like the weapons the weapons leveling is the same. For some reason this year they're not calling them weapons platforms, and you don't see the branches and trees that you saw like kind of a la World of Warships, World of Tanks, like you saw with Modern Warfare 2. But it's the same kind of thing. But like the vector of change has been tightened up, and I think that makes the game more enjoyable. There's part of me, I'm kind of divided right now, 50-50, right? There's part of me that says it would actually be great if you guys just kept on with this, because then I wouldn't feel like I've got, swivel head like every single year, being jerked around, trying to have like look, the game comes out, you pay $70 for it, you get 12 months. You spend a good chunk of those 12 months like refiguring out like the new systems and re-leveling everything. So there's another part of me that says, yeah, like it would be nice to get rid of a lot of that, right? And get rid of a lot of that friction. So it'll be interesting to see where they go. It would be kind of nice if Black Ops, like I said, wouldn't be, this entirely new wackadoodle thing next year, but, we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. All right, so and then your next game here is a Switch Mario game.
Yeah, so we talked earlier in the show about Nintendo financials that came out, and one of the things that came out was an article. I mean, they mentioned in their financials, but then a few news outlets ran an article of this particular list that they talked about, and I'm not sure to what detail they talked about it, but first of all, they mentioned one good factor in terms of their financials was that I can't remember exactly off the top of my head, but like some number of their games last year sold something ridiculous, like 20 something of their games, or maybe 30 something of their games. I want to say sold like more than 1 million units. I think it was more than 1 million units. And I'm like, that's more games than they put out last year. So by mathematical definition, they have games that released in 2022 or earlier that are still selling in excess of 1 million units per year. That, and again, you look at other games around the industry, and I'm like any other game would kill to have that type of sell through, right? In at the second year point or further point. Case in point, this game actually came out in 2019, and it's one of their top selling games ever. I think it is number 10 actually in that top 10 list, and I think they've sold like 17.62 million, something like that. So I decided to add yet another log to the campfire, and so when this article ran, as I mentioned earlier in the podcast, I said, let me look at this list. Which ones of these have I not played? Should I give some of these a look? And I went after Super Mario Brothers U Deluxe, which is actually kind of in the same vein as Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. It was actually a Wii U game that came out in 2012. And then they spun a, update, but not update, but update for it on the Nintendo Switch in 2019. I haven't played that much of this. This is not Super Mario Odyssey. This is a straight up 2D side scroller, very much a la Super Mario Brothers, like way back in the day. I've only just gotten started with it, and I want to say it's the first one in this particular branch of the franchise that I think they said had HD graphics, so had 1080p. I'm just getting started with it. It certainly is fun. I'm not a platformer guy, as I mentioned in a write-up for another game that I'll talk about here later in the show. The notion of doing a run on a level for the express purpose of collecting coins so that you can gain access to rerun that level multiple times for the express purpose of gaining more coins. I've become a gamer that's more dyed in the wool of the manner in which gaming has progressed and is stimulated by goals that are have become far wide and different from that. That being said, maybe it's going to find a place kind of in my panoply where it's a game that I just come in and sit down with and boot it up and play 5, 10, 15 minutes and do a run. And it's extremely casual. And I don't, I'm not white knuckled with my hands on a steering wheel trying to drive a flipping Formula One V8 car around a track at 190 miles per hour plus. So, there are some plus sides to it, and I'm sure that it gets more challenging. It has the same thing that kind of typically Mario has always had in it, which is that, your momentum, carries you just a bit further than your input to the controls. So that monkeys with your precision and kind of, the formulas you're calculating in your head of when you're going to jump and where. This is the game that, of course, has the squirrel suit mechanic, which adds a lot to the game in terms of verticality, which I think is very cool. I, of course, when I first started my run, totally forget, because I'm not a Super Mario guy. Remember, I did not grow up with the Nintendo. Of course, I forgot about the notion that these levels have a time limit. So time ran out, and I was like, I just need to scout this level and like figure it out and get in my head the time. I think one thing that I've always been impressed by is people's ability to like keep track of, like, know where they need to be on the level based on the time. I do not have that ability, and that's something that I'm definitely gonna have to learn. But it's a neat enough game. It's stylistic. Critical reception for this game wasn't super high. It's like number 600 in terms of kind of review scores overall for the whole Nintendo Switch library. But it definitely occupies its place, probably mostly based on kind of its historic nostalgia and DNA, and I'm having a good time with it.
Yeah, I think this is the one with the multiplayer where you actually like bump each other off, right? Yeah. So
I don't. Well, again, I haven't experienced that mechanic because I just have. But it is one where like up to 4 players I think can be in the game at any one time.
Yeah, I think that was the one. Yeah, and I think the later ones is where they ghosted the players where you didn't have that bumping action like so it was kind of co-op but competitive at the same time. This one, so this is one of the few Mario games I have never played. I never played this one either on the Wii U or on the Switch, so might be kind of nice to visit someday, just like kind of like you're doing. So
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons I went after it because again, I'm not prone to go after a Super Mario game at all, but this is definitely also one that I bypassed.
yeah,
One go back. Lord Metroid mentioned says I don't play COD as Activision announced which on the franchise it is. I think yeah, I mean it's kind of what we talked about. Like this year is supposed to be another iteration in Black Ops, and then is because we had because Sledgehammer did Modern Warfare 3. This puts up Treyarch, and so Infinity Ward should be next. So you would imagine that like after this, we're going to keep going with another, Modern Warfare or branch out into. I don't know what they're going to do because I don't think reception was particularly great on like Advanced Warfare and them going futuristic, and that created kind of a problem in the overall timeline and the way forward that got them back to a point where they needed to reboot. So we'll see if they're going to stay kind of in the modern era.
all right, jumping real quick into my two games here. Like I mentioned before, I jumped back into Fallout 4. I think like a lot of people, I had finished the show this past couple weeks. Very good show. I highly recommend it. Even if you don't like Fallout, it's just kind of a cool, goofy show. Since I had played 3 and 4 previously a little bit, the show does take a lot from it, and as people say, weaves its own story. So that was actually kind of nice. It wasn't just like a reinterpretation or an interpretation of any of the current games. So it was its own thing. But that made me jump back into Fallout 4. I hadn't really gotten too far into it from my previous play when I originally bought it. So I was like, yeah, and I usually don't do this, but I was like, I'm just gonna start totally over. So I started over. I played a couple weeks ago, and I was like, I don't know like what's going on. Like even story wise, I wasn't kind of sure what was going on. So I was like, I'll just start over. So this week I had started over right before the weekend actually. Create a new character. Usually I like to fiddle with that stuff and take like a half hour, 45 minutes, but I just kind of just did a real quick character creation thing, which in Bethesda games those are usually pretty extensive that you can get tooling around with all the face and body and all that. But I just kind of not really did a random thing, but I just tweaked high level stuff, face and body type, and that was it. I didn't like you know over bulge my arms or under bulge them or make them skinny or long or anything like that. So I started a new one, and I played, I think, almost 4 hours, actually, maybe 4.5, since I started playing this weekend, and little bit at the end of the week last week. But just kind of and it was kind of good because I was like, the story's kind of cool, like at the beginning and stuff. It's not, so you actually don't start off in a vault like I think you did in 3. And I'm not sure about the other games, like the previous games before they turned 3D, but uh, it was kind of cool just kind of seeing that it was like a whole fairly lengthy beginning, little bit of cinematic, and then you kind of were able to move around the world too a little bit before you had to go into the vault and stuff. So just pretty intriguing story that you're following right now. And I'm out in the world now. I've gotten some pretty powerful weapons, which I'm kind of surprised. Like I got this rocket launcher thing that I just got like in this past couple of quests that I was doing. So, bunch of sniper rifles, and this is other. Already got a power armor, which I don't remember getting, which is like the big suit of armor that you can get from the Brotherhood Steel guys. I already got that, so it's like I don't know if that was the thing from before, or if maybe just because this has all the updates and all the DLC and stuff. So maybe some stuff kind of changed from when I originally played it, but now you need like power cores for those things too. So eventually that'll run out and I'll have to find some more. But I've been watching some videos, so I know how to. Good old YouTube. I watched some videos, so I know how to get them fairly easily now. But yeah, no, I'm just having a lot of fun with the game, and it's pretty hard. I think I have it. I didn't change the difficulty, so it's probably on like the medium setting, the medium difficulty. But yeah, definitely challenging. Like I've died a bunch of times, and of course, because I don't know. I'm an idiot. I forgot Bethesda games. You got to save off, off and off and all the time and off and as much as you can. So, so now anytime I think I'm about to get into a fight, I'm like, all right, I'm going to save it because I don't want to have to start this whole thing over, which I had to do a couple times just because I forgot about it. But yeah, it's pretty cool just kind of going through and kind of video game wise, at least revisiting the world and kind of getting better. Now, I had mentioned earlier that how Starfield it does have the better gunplay, and I think it's mostly because you're basically just using iron sights, as far as I can tell so far. I haven't seen any other kind of well, other than like a sniper rifle, you have a scope on that. But you just have the little iron sight at the end of the gun, and it's for me at least, it's way hard to shoot people with just that iron sight for some reason. So it's either something I just got to get used to, or like I said, maybe you can modify the weapons, but I haven't seen any scopes or anything that I can put on there yet. So I'll have to see how that works out later. But it just it's pretty cool. Just kind of going back and not super old game. Obviously, I'm not going back to Skyrim or anything, but still, it's an earlier game in Bethesda's catalog. So you kind of see how they got a little bit better with Starfield and stuff like that. So, but I'll keep going through that this coming week. So having a lot of fun. And then the second one, another one that I've been playing quite a lot this past week and a half is I went back to Lego Fortnite, which if you don't know what that is, that's more of a survival game. It's got nothing to do with Battle Royal. So you're just in a realistic world, but you have all the buildings and stuff and animals and characters are all Lego, minifigs and stuff like that. So I just jumped back into a world. Um, that I had been, I think actually my son had created it, so he had shared it with me. So just going back to that, and just kind of when I first got in there, I was like trying to once again acclimate myself back into the controls and all that because it's different from game to game. Which I think as I get older, I just get more fist of the air, old man kind of a thing where it's like I wish everything would just kind of standardize because I have to like fiddle with stuff to jump buttons are always different. That's the one thing on the Bethesda games too. Their jump button is Y for some strange reason on a controller. So I got to go back and reconfigure those mappings and stuff. So, but I was just getting back into it, and they had actually just had a big update in the Lego Fortnite game where you can actually create like create your own vehicle if you want, or they have like the kind of blueprint things where as long as you get the materials you can build their pre-made kind of vehicles. So I just did the pre-made vehicles so far. I haven't really messed with kind of configuring my own because you have like they actually have kind of interesting because they have the wheels that give the power and then just just wheels. The other wheels are just to roll around. So it's not just hey you can just build it and go. You have to actually kind of figure out what you're going to do. Otherwise it's you're just going to spin in circles or go nowhere. So that's kind of cool that they kind of thought about that. But the car itself, the one I have now is just kind of like a medium. I think they have 3 pre-made ones, so it's like the fast one. The one I have now, which is like the medium one, which is you can put a few things like on it to like my son put a bunch of chests on it, so we can just travel around and we don't have to keep going back and forth between like our village and places we're trying to gather stuff. And then there's I guess think a bigger like kind of a truck or like you know uh or vehicle, something like that, where you can put all kinds of storage and stuff, and go around with that one. So we're just doing the medium one right now, and I think I've only unlocked this faster one, but I haven't built it yet, so I'll have to see how fast that is. It's a decent. It's the one we have now. It's obviously faster than walking or running, but it's still not the fastest thing. Like as because the worlds are pretty big, so it's kind of like Minecraft. Like you have a certain like kind of grid when you're looking at the map, and you can kind of go off that grid, and there's just more biomes and stuff that you can go through. So it's just kind of interesting. And there's a whole bunch of other stuff they've added, like compass, which is kind of weird that they didn't have before. You had a map, but you didn't really have like a compass where you can actually figure out where you're going and stuff like that, and like looking glasses and all these other different tools and I think some weapons. I haven't seen the new weapons yet, though. Other than they have the Star Wars crossover that they're also doing with Lego Fortnite, where there's actually a kind of a storyline that you kind of go through, where you're kind of building a rebel base. So they had a little animation when I first went into the game, back into the game, with like this big Star Destroyer getting attacked and it crashes, and that's where the story begins. So it's kind of cool that they're kind of doing kind of the same thing they did with in the Battle Royale game with the Lego Fortnite now too, just kind of putting storylines in. So I'm assuming that's how they'll kind of introduce. Like they have a bunch of different Lego sets that you can of course pay for, but there's some that you get for free, and you can build Star Wars. Like I think the one now is the Mos Eisley, so you can do those kind of buildings and stuff. So that's kind of cool. But I'm sure they'll do that with like future iterations. I think there was always a rumor that they're going to do that Ninjago one too, which maybe that's like their next big one that they're going to do, where they kind of have like a storyline going through it. So, but just having a little fun with that and kind of continue playing with that and play with my son. So we played a little bit over the during the week, at least not so much this weekend, but just trying to get the cars and stuff going and get all these other materials and stuff we need for all these new weapons and stuff. So I'll continue with that. All right. So you had one more game Logic, another Switch game, which I thought was a cooking game for a second there until I looked it up, and it's not. Thought it was like an Overcooked or something. I think you're bringing up some video. Yep, there you go.
Yeah. So this is.
It looks interesting, that's for sure.
Yeah. So another article that I saw this week that caused me to kind of, trigger and go look some things up was Devolver Digital made a series of comments this week that talked about how the Nintendo Switch is the most hospitable place today for indies in comparison to Xbox or PlayStation. Talked about how, that platform had really kind of engendered and made it a friendly place for indies to come and put their wares on offer. It made me think about the fact that I haven't played a lot of Devolver Digital games on the Switch. So I went and checked out their latest, which it turns out to be a game called Pepper Grinder, which hasn't got a lot of attention by the press or really much anyone else. So we've talked a lot this year about how we've seen these Metroidvanias that have kind of evoked feelings reminiscent of Ori. We brought that up in reference to Tales of Kenzara Zao. We brought it up with reference to Prince of Persia, The Lost Crown. But, and I haven't played Zao, but I have played Prince of Persia, The Lost Crown. Pepper Grinder feels a lot closer to the dynamic of Ori than those two for me. Mainly for one reason. Ori is a lot about momentum. Much more so to me than Prince of Persia is, and again, I don't know for certain, but more so to me than what I have seen from Zao, although actually playing the game might be different. I spent a few minutes with Pepper Grinder for the first level, and I can tell you it's a game that I'm probably not likely to finish. Well, let me take that back. Word of the game longer. This game's how long to beat is only 3 hours, so I probably will actually finish it. Total exploration, 100% in the game is 9 hours. But the key thing is for me, as I mentioned, I'm not a platformer gamer. It's not really in my wheelhouse. But like this game to me is more Metroidvania than a lot of other games that have come along. The big key hook, as you can kind of see here from the gameplay, is going back to how it relates to Ori for me, is it's a lot about perpetual motion. And it uses sand in a lot of ways to me that feel akin to water. It also reminds me a lot of playing Ollie Ollie World, where once you went into some of those long grinds on Ollie Ollie World, they just expected you to like stay in the grind for like a whole half of the level. And so this is kind of similar where if you go into the sand grind modality, you can kind of see here, and you'll see later in some of this gameplay, where they're really expecting you to hop from like sand ocean to sand lake or whatever, and keep that perpetual motion going, keep that speed going. That makes it really tough because a lot of times, kind of like I talked about those levels in Doom Eternal, the ones that really made me angry, where you don't have time to think or get a lay of the land, right? You just have to start platforming, and like once you start, like the only way to get through the thing is to keep platforming until the end. So and that also makes the game to me feel a little exhausting, not in a bad way, but just in terms of like I go into some of these sand grinds and you finally come out of it and you're just like, oh, hold on, man. Like I need a few minutes to catch my breath. The other thing that you'll see is, some of the sand lakes are like really small, and you can never get to zero motion when you're in a sand lake, which just makes it really difficult to be so uber precise when you're in that small sand container, to really prep yourself for the next jump. So that's kind of a negative or a knock on the game. It would be really nice to just be able to come to a complete stop, even if they made you like squeeze a trigger or a shoulder button or something to like hold position. It just means like when you're, as you can see here, like when you're prepping to jump, like there's very little margin for error. You've got to be uber precise, and we all know why I tend to dislike platformers is because a lot of platformers are super demanding and really pretentious and require you to be uber precise. This game, for the most part, requires you to be uber precise to chain link the jumps from sand lake to sand lake. It is less rare, although I suspect it will get more as the game goes on. It's less rare that you will like fall off the map and lose a life. But that happens as well as you get further on. Overall, I'm pretty excited that I discovered this, just from going out on a fishing expedition based on, a news story that I saw. The game goes for $15 on the eShop. And it seems pretty cool. It's also available on PC, I think, for the same price. And I guess one thing I'll mention is, there are a lot of people who are like uber specific and wrapped around the axle about labels, and so a lot of people won't call this a Metroidvania. I saw a lot of additional reviews after I played some time with it who just refer to it as a 2D side-scrolling platformer. I kind of wrote my thoughts down about the game as I was experiencing them before I went off to see kind of what other people were saying about the game. I applied the label Metroidvania based on what I saw, so I'm going to continue using that label. Like I said, it is. There's just, I'm also a person who, thinks of World of Warships as a MOBA, even though people don't like it, when you use that term, it misses some elements of that, but it's much closer to a MOBA to me than just like a first-person shooter or a vehicle sim. So, I'm going to keep going with Metroidvania. But I've enjoyed what I've seen so far. Like I said, the game's about 3 hours, so I'm probably going to stick with it. I'm probably just going to nibble at it, kind of just like I talked about Super Mario Brothers U Deluxe.
Yeah, it looks like it's pretty frustrating looking at this video. Just watching you trying to get to that first coin that you were trying to get to. It's like, oh yeah, that would drive me insane. But yeah, it looks pretty cool though.
Well, and that's a lot of that is like me experiencing the system for the first time. So this is the first level, and this is me playing for the first time. It starts to click as you go on, and really, and as you see, like when a mistake just results in you bouncing off a wall, that's not a big deal. When a mistake results in you falling off the level, then that's where it's problematic. Right now, that happens sometimes, but I would say like maybe 10% of the time you like really get into that. In comparison to just like the normal modality, if that ratio starts to shift, then that rate could become frustrating. But I can't imagine that it'll shift that much in a 3 hour, like in a 3 hour game to mainline the campaign. So yeah. I'm hoping they keep the difficulty level, pretty even keel, right, for the duration of that game. And then we'll just have to see. This is a thing that would be great if they pack on some DLC to it. This game just came out, I want to say March. I want to say its release date was maybe March 23rd, 2024, maybe. But yeah, it would be great if they drop some additional levels or something for this. This is like the type of game that to me is like that's perfect for.
Yeah. Paul's game is asking, is this a single map or is there levels that you've seen so far?
There's definitely levels. So the way the map is laid out, it's actually very similar to Super Mario Brothers U Deluxe. Is when I get to the end of this level, it opens up a map, and there's probably about 4 stages per level. So this is level 1-1, and level 1 has like 4 stages in it. And then I suspect there's probably like maybe 3 like master levels with 4 to 6 kind of chapters per level,
Yeah.
per stage, however you want to think about it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, this reminds me of um like going when I was first like playing trials, you just gotta kind of keep going at it and going at it to try to figure out, the level until until you got it.
Yeah, Lord Metro mentions that it's kind of like Dig Dug. Yeah, it's kind of like if Dig Dug took speed. Is what it's like.
All right, awesome. All right, so that is the end of the show. So it looks like you have Microsoft Flight Simulator coming up that you're going to be jumping into.
Yeah, so the next thing up for me, will be Microsoft Flight Simulator. I've got the Logitech Yoke flight control system rigged up now. So once probably double XP weekend is over, I'll be hopping back into that.
Nice. And I will jump back into Fallout 4 and probably, like I mentioned earlier, probably some more Starfield. Somebody had mentioned, Lord Metroid had actually said, I don't actually use the power armor. I like a bit of a challenge. Yes, the power armor is super overpowered when you have it. So, especially when you get that big chain gun right at the beginning. And so, I don't know if you get any other kind of weapons later on, but it just in the little bit I had it, I was like just tearing through people, and even one of the I forgot what those big creatures are right now, but I was able to kill him fairly easily. So, or it. So yeah, definitely overpowered when you're in that armor. All right, that is the show for tonight. Thank you, Wara, Paul's Gaming, Lord Metroid, Hero Down Under. I think I saw there, Nate too. Thanks for stopping by. Please join us next week for episode number 339. Should be back on Sunday, and I will most likely be hosting again. I had to take over for DB this week, but I'm fine with hosting again. It's no big deal. GameLogic, any last words before we head out?
No, not at all.
All right, cool. Thanks everybody for watching. Thanks everybody for stopping by in the comments. If you want to check us out on YouTube, please do that, or SoundCloud if you just want the audio version. And we will be back next week, same time and same channel. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night. Take care of yourselves out there and keep playing those games. We'll check it out next week.